Just because she's an actor, but you're still off.
Terrific. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to say a big thank you to the University of Illinois for hosting us and helping us to celebrate Illinois' landmark effort to reshape our criminal justice system. This College of Law has built restorative justice into its curriculum, with students helping residents through the expungement process so that they can truly embrace the freedom that they've earned. And of course, that's far from the only explanation why we're here today. Leader Carol Ammons has fought hard as a leader on behalf of justice, someone who cares deeply about making real change in people's lives for the better, serving on the Illinois Supreme Court Commission on Pretrial Practices alongside Senator L.G. Sims, Chairman Sims, I should say, a commission, by the way, that helped to shape the structure of the law that is our focus today. I'm also very proud to be here in Champaign with Senators Scott Bennett and Robert Peters, who stand with us, and with Representative Justin Slaughter, also one of the authors of this bill. There are some of the other extraordinary individuals who have made this moment possible, and I want to recognize them, of course, in addition to the many advocates that are stand for justice and are inside the General Assembly. There are those outside the General Assembly that deserve recognition, and that includes the ACLU of Champaign County and the generations of people who preceded us to make it even possible for this bill to get passed and signed. I also want to offer a warm welcome to Champaign County NAACP President Minnie Pearson, Champaign County State's Attorney Julia Reitz, Champaign County Public Defender Janie Miller-Jones, James Corbin from First Followers, and Molly Galloway from the Champaign Bailout Coalition. I'm truly grateful to have so many voices represented in this conversation about true justice and how we can deliver a fairer and safer legal system to the communities that we serve. From the outset, my administration established the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative, which Lieutenant Governor Stratton oversees, which focuses on our criminal justice reform efforts from the administration's perspective. Working with the General Assembly, we've expunged 500,000 cannabis arrest records. We've pardoned over 20,000 more. We've awarded many millions of dollars now to communities harmed by the war on drugs. And we've brought our state's prison population down by 25% since the beginning of this pandemic. At the beginning of 2020, Lieutenant Governor Stratton and I announced 3 major criminal justice reform goals of ours: transforming the pretrial detention system so that low-income people aren't thrown behind bars while only the wealthy walk free, diverting low-level drug crimes into substance treatment programs, and reducing excessive stays in prison. In this terrible year, in the middle of a brutal viral pandemic that hurt Black people and brown people disproportionately, the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus did something really monumental. Passed legislation that not only advances our shared goals, but also enhances post-arrest rights, increases victim compensation, alters release terms for low-level felonies, and ends prison gerrymandering. In short, this legislation marks a substantial step toward true safety, true fairness, and true justice. We've already seen some opponents of this law spread untruths and promote political fear-mongering. But the changes that will be brought about by this new law will bring more justice and more fairness to many who have so often been forgotten. What's more, Illinoisans want to see less money spent on long, punitive prison sentences and more money spent on prevention and rehabilitation, efforts that keep us all safer, efforts that are going to be emboldened within this law. With that, I'd like to turn it over to someone who no doubt is a great representative for the people that she serves, a leader in this effort, Leader Carol Ammons. Carol? There you are.
Thank you to the governor of the greatest state in the nation, Governor J.B. Pritzker, who didn't just say he is for criminal justice reform, he has demonstrated that. I do want to thank the governor for supporting this package. I want to thank my colleagues in the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus for their unrelenting work on this monumental legislation. To Senator Sims and Representative Justin Slaughter for really doing the work to usher this omnibus package to place it on the governor's desk. I want to thank the House Democratic Caucus and the House Democratic staff, particularly Oluchi Ifebi and James Hartman on the House side, who worked hundreds of hours to get this piece of legislation through. Thank you to my district staff for coordinating with Springfield, staying up all hours of the night, during lame duck, during the preceding hearings, all of the meetings. We thank you for all of your dedication and work. Staffing a member of the General Assembly is no easy task, and we are lucky to have such dedicated teams. Finally, I want to thank the local groups. I want to thank them for their tireless efforts and work and perseverance for this cause. We didn't just start this yesterday. To my husband, who started the initial process for us to even have an expungement summit, Aaron Ammons, kicked it off at our church here at Salem Baptist Church. And he knew then, over almost 2 decades ago, that it was imperative for citizens of our community to have a second chance. And they needed a fair opportunity. And he stepped up and stepped in to make that happen. So I thank him. To professors like Tom Moore, who took many hours representing the NAACP to research and study the impact of the criminal record on people in Champaign County. He specifically took his scholarship and for free contributed a monumental work. To Professor Sam Jones of the University of Illinois at Chicago, who came and brilliantly testified in our House hearings for this package and why we needed to do it, for the brilliant academic research and success that he provided for us is immeasurable. The reason why we are standing in this law school today is because the lawyers that will come out of this institution for tomorrow will be faced with some of the same challenges that we're faced with today. What will we do to bring equity and justice to every citizen of this state as well as this nation? And what the professors teach here will have an impact one way or the other. I want to also thank the community groups, Champaign-Urbana Citizens for Peace and Justice, the group that myself, my husband, Danielle Chenoweth, Kim Cronick, and one other person who is always going to remain nameless, founded 2 decades ago to work on bail, to work on reentry, to work on expungement, and all of the dedication over 10 years of work every single Saturday for no money. Those people got together and built with their scholarship what we have today. The Champaign Bail Coalition that is represented here today, they only came about because we had so many citizens going to our county jail who could not afford to bail out of small amounts. And out of that necessity, the Bail Coalition was born here in Champaign-Urbana. I do want to take a moment and really thank the NAACP, for which I've been working with for 2 decades, first followers, and numerous community groups and churches in the local community who have been justice reform advocates and have provided context as well as place for us to do our work. What has now emerged in our community are leaders who are truly trauma-informed, not just victim advocates, but also for those who may not have done the right thing at one time or another, to have us and help us re-educate them as well as the public about our responsibilities and duties as citizens. I've been a member of the General Assembly for just about 6 years now, and I love my job. But before I was a lawmaker, I was an activist, running around this community, fighting every single issue that someone brought to us that we knew we had the power to change. And so for the brilliant scholarship of Belden Fields, my mentor, we thank you for helping us get to this point. The biggest similarities between being an activist and a lawmaker is simply the fight. Changing the law is hard. It takes time and dedication. I say this because what we saw in the contextualized win of this package will be celebrated long before and long after I am gone. This is a massive victory for the Black community, but it's truly a victory for all communities and all marginalized people, and it will reverberate for decades. You're here that this bill has been rushed, that stakeholders didn't get a seat at the table, didn't have enough time to read the bill. These are all false narratives perpetuated by the opponents of this cause, because at no point have any of the stakeholders brought us legitimate solutions to deal with what we know were unequal and unjust laws. Well, we've been waiting a long time. We've been waiting since Dr. King said, we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. The Illinois Legislative Black Caucus heard the call, and we saw the video, just like every person in this country and the world, of the murder of George Floyd, and so many others that spurred us into a direct action that we needed to put into legislative action, and it has resulted in this package that is before you today. It has been years. Many of the bills that you see are culminated into this package, started with individual members. This advocacy work around use of force didn't start in lame duck. It started 3 or 4 sessions before that, and I'm certain it started with Mary Flowers, my senior member in the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus. So we don't want to play as if we did not know that these things were happening, but we took the responsibility as the Black Caucus to put them all together, to work on revising use of force, to work on providing more access for traffic stops and recording data and racial disparity outcomes that we know need to be addressed in our system. We also took seriously the work of the Supreme Court Commission, for which me, my colleague, as well as Senator Bennett serve on. And we've been on that commission since 2017, trying to deal with the issues of bail reform. So when they say to you that it is rushed, that is a false narrative. In closing, the facts are the facts. We do have 2 Americas, and we have 2 justice systems, and we have to make them one. Our goal in this fight is to rid the state of Illinois of systemic racism. My colleagues and I have put in our time. This legislative victory is a step toward reimagining the criminal justice system altogether. The Illinois Legislative Black Caucus have, at every intention, continued this fight, and we will continue to add to this monumental work. Equity and justice is not just for this moment. It is for communities to come, for the entirety of the law. If there is to be balance, truly balanced, that is truly fair, that we have to look into the eyes of justice and say it is a little bit off-tilted, and this effort that we are having today is to bring it back into balance. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Governor Pritzker. Thank you to Senator Sims and Senator Slaughter for your tireless work, and I know how hard that was. We really do appreciate you. With that, I'd like to bring my partner in Champaign-Urbana to this podium. Senator Bennett is a stalwart in this community. He and I work together collectively. We bounce things off of each other. And because of that, we've been able to work seamlessly to pass so many positive pieces of legislation for Champaign-Urbana, but also for the entire state of Illinois. So please welcome Senator Scott Bennett.
Great job, Karen.
Thank you.
Well, I thank Leader Ammons for her kind comments. It's always hard to follow Leader Ammons because she's a great speaker, but I don't have to thank as many people because she really did a great job of being comprehensive with that. I echo many of our community advocates and the work they've done throughout the years on that. Before I start, I wanted to again thank Governor Pritzker. This is the second time in February, I think, that you've been here on this campus, both with our vaccine clinics and now today. You truly care about the entire state of Illinois, and we appreciate having you in Champaign-Urbana. I also wanted to thank State's Attorney Julia Reitz in Champaign County, one, for giving me a chance to work in Champaign County in the State's Attorney's office about a decade ago, but two, because State's Attorney Reitz clearly gets the topic of the concept, rather, of why it's important to keep a great State's Attorney office, why you want your prosecutors experienced, why you want them to understand what's the difference between a serious violent offender and someone that we can deal with a community-based sentence. That is not something that every county recognizes and every State's Attorney recognizes, but that is an important step toward any criminal justice reform. I try to draw on my experience as a prosecutor in her office as well as in McLean County when I think about bail issues. And I will tell you, I did not start out as a proponent for ending cash bail. I, like a lot of people, said, well, I feel a lot safer if everybody is, in custody, and then we figure things out as we wait trial. But what I've learned through both being a prosecutor, being the chair of the Senate Criminal Law Committee, and serving on the Supreme Court Commission that's also a member of, as was mentioned, Leader Ammons and Senator Sims, is that cash bail doesn't keep anybody any safer. I think about some of my own experiences with very violent, scary defendants that the judge thought they were sending a message instead of a very high bond. And that's fine as long as that person doesn't have family money or real estate they could leverage. And the next thing you know, no matter how high the bond was set, they were out, and the witnesses and victims were very scared about what might happen. And some of them didn't want to testify after that. Money didn't keep those people safer. And on the other end of the spectrum, the small amounts of money that a judge might set in various counties to say, well, $100 or $200 to secure your appearance in court, that doesn't do anything other than maybe lose that person their job, or if they're perhaps a single parent, uproot the family and try to figure out who's going to have custody of a small child while they try to figure out until payday how they're going to get that money. Fact is, if you're a violent offender, you should stay in custody until your trial date. If you're not a violent offender, you should have a chance to prove you're willing to come to court the next time until you prove that you're not going to take that seriously. And that's, I think, what this bill is striving to do, and I really credit Senator Peters. We've been working together on this for several weeks and months at this point, and we're kind of the odd couple in the Senate on this because Senator Peters from Hyde Park is been a very strong proponent on this. I was kind of viewed as the prosecutor of the Senate, but there is common ground that can be reached, and I think that's true across this conversation. There's more things I know that we're going to need to do. No one bill, no matter how comprehensive, no matter how broad and bold, cannot handle and address every problem that we have in our society. But it starts with being honest, not forcing people to choose between accountable, well-trained police officers and officer safety, for example, and not having to not saying that if you address one that you're endangering another. That's an important part of the step. I look forward to being part of the conversation as we go forward. But most importantly, I just wanted to thank all the principals and stakeholders. This is a tough topic to address, and makes us face some ugly things about our society. But if we're doing our job in Springfield or in our nation, I think that's an important first step toward making things a little better than we found them. And with that, I want to introduce our next speaker, Minnie Pearson. Minnie Pearson, as was said, is the head of our local NAACP. She is a long-term resident of Champaign County, graduated, I think, master's and bachelor's from the U of I, and of course was an elementary school teacher here in the Champaign School District for about 30 years. So she's got a long-time investment. I'm really interested in her perspective on this. Please welcome Minnie Pearson.
First of all, I needed to take a look at the document that most people say was created overnight in a shady place. This is a big document, and it's a big deal. So give everybody here a hand. I, too, I'm Minnie Pearson. I'm the president of the NAACP Champaign County branch, and we have been an advocate for racial justice and criminal justice for a very, very long time. After all, we are the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And I want to thank Governor Pritzker, Representative uh, Representative Carol Ammons, and Senator Bennett, and all who worked on this. So what I want to say to our governor is we are so thankful and glad to have him. He is one of the best governors in the United States, and he listened to our voice. He listened to the voices of the people of Illinois. This is really, really, I'm serious, a very big deal by signing Bill HB 3653, this legislation transforming the Illinois criminal justice system, which will bring our state criminal justice system up to the 21st century. We've been operating way back in the 50s and 60s, and it was about time that we brought things to up to date, which expands safety, fairness, and justice. 3 words that mean so much to our community and the people we have been advocating for change for years. NAACP Representative Carol Ammons and ACLU and others. It took a collective group of people to get this going. We also are pleased at the dollars that are being put into this bill to ensure that our police officers will continuously get training to become better police officers. Which will help them to work with the community, build trust, and understand that we want to be policed the same way you would police their white middle-class communities. We want to feel safe as we move about Champaign-Urbana and Champaign County. We want to feel safe and part of the community. We want to be respected. We want the same thing that any other people experience. We want to one day look at our police officers as peace officers instead of police and force. And people who are, when they see us, they see a target. They see us as danger. We want to be viewed the way we are, and that is we're human first with all of the dignity and respect that any other community deserves. And with that in mind, I want to bring up Senator Sims, who is going to finish it up.
Order a little bit. I'm sorry. Representative Justin Slaughter
No.
is going to go next.
Yes, okay. Excuse me.
Apology. That is our fault. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minnie. Good afternoon, State Representative Justin Slaughter, House sponsor of HB 3653, also known as the Safety Act. I want to thank the University of Illinois College of Law for hosting us today. Thank you, Governor Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor Stratton, for your continued dedication and commitment to criminal justice reform. Governor, you are a national leader. It's important to note that the governor made criminal justice reform a priority of his administration before last summer, before last fall, before the civil unrest and the protests. And so we're just proud of your efforts and what your administration is doing to serve our great state with distinction. Of course, it's great to be here with our host, leader, State Representative Carol Ammons. I can't say enough, she's our majority caucus chair. She keeps us in order. She keeps our meetings flowing. She keeps us on task. Her tireless work on criminal justice reform should be noted. When Chairman Sims was putting the bill together, he'd often, call me, text me, hey, Representative Slaughter, and then House bills that we can use for this transformative big omnibus bill. Representative Ammons, and she might have the most bills actually that are represented in these provisions in this bill. She has been pushing criminal justice reform, especially on the use of force provisions in this bill. Carol has had a tremendous influence and impact on the criminal justice pillar. Kind of leads me to this. We'll be seeing a lot of her. She was also the House sponsor of the education pillar, which hopefully we'll be signing that shortly. But I also want to stick a pin in this. We'll talk about the bill in a second. The Ammons family. We're talking about Black history. It's only fitting we're here in February. Leader Ammons, the first Black person to represent Champaign in this area, the first Black person in House leadership. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention her other half, not her better half, her other half, Champaign County Clerk Aaron Ammons. Aaron, I believe you're the first Black person to hold that seat as well. History makers, please, everyone join me in giving the Ammons family another round of applause. When you think about the past summer, what was happening with protests both locally and nationally, there was a call for action, a call for change on social justice issues, not just from the Black community, but many people all over the country of all walks of life were coming together to bring fairness and equity to a criminal justice system that's rooted in racism. This movement, and make no mistake about it, this is about the people. This bill represents for Illinois us going from protest to progress. Senator, you know I have to get that one in one more time. Many of you, many folks, and I guess at this point, not just here in the state, but around the country, are hearing what this bill is not about. What this bill is a national model, a transformative, comprehensive, common sense approach to addressing policing and our mass incarceration crisis. We were able to comprehensively look at policing, a 7-point framework: crisis intervention, use of force, transparency, accountability, oversight and enforcement, detainment, and also officer wellness. With sentencing reform and mass incarceration, of course, Blacks in this state making up 14% of the population, but routinely 50 to 60% of our Department of Corrections population, bringing more judicial discretion for mandatory minimums, more alternatives for custody, and of course, codifying into law. Oh, I thought you were Senator Peterson. He's over here. Codifying into law, but Senator Bennett, you did talk about it, the Pretrial Fairness Act, which ends the unfair practice of cash bail. Senator Peters, chair of the Senate Public Safety Committee, being the sponsor of that bill. This makes a whole host of modifications, also with prison reforms, modernizing our sentencing credit program, and also becoming a leader in the country around ending prison gerrymandering. I also want to, if I can, just shed a little light on Chairman Sims. Just a great, tremendous job of being the lead negotiator on the bill, putting down markers throughout the bill as catalysts for change to address the myriad of social justice issues. But also, if you look at the various effective dates in the bill, strategically cultivating a great opportunity for ongoing dialogue, Leader Ammons being at the forefront of that ongoing dialogue. Just want to thank Chairman Sims for his time, his energy, and his effort. The first state to legislate in ending cash bail, the seventh state to provide for a statewide body cam program. In January of 2022, We'll have a statewide universalized use of force policy. Again, Representative Ammons at the forefront of that. Victim advocates, victim rights being protected, victim survivors coming and being very, very strongly supportive of this bill, of the Safety Act. Listen, we're very, very proud of working with the community, working with all of the advocacy and activist groups, answering the call for change. Thank you for all of your time. Together, we will continue to march forward. Together, we will bring public safety and justice to communities, to all of our communities. Together, we go from protest to progress. With that said, let me bring up my colleague, again, chair of the Senate Public Safety Committee, also Senate chair for the Black Caucus, State Senator Robert Peters.
Hello, I'm State Senator Robert Peters of the 13th District. Let me first say this is personal for me. You know, I've been giving the same speech. I almost say it so much. And I think one part that's personal to me is that we're in a law library. And I grew up with a dad who was a civil rights lawyer and a criminal defense attorney, who's sort of my hero. You know, as a kid, I struggled. I was born deaf with a speech impediment. My biological mom was addicted to drugs and alcohol. I remember being told by people who were a lot older than me that I would amount to very little. And my dad, a lawyer, someone I argued with all the time, and he would get really, really lawyerly with me to the point where it became very difficult. He told me that it's not about whether you succeed or fail. It's about whether you try. And it is on you to find out whether you succeeded or failed. It fundamentally changed my life. And when I think about what we just did, the history we just made, it's why you go out there and you try. It's why you go out there and you organize. It's why you go out there and make bold demands. So this is personal to me, not just on the level of history or the fact that I played a role with it, but personal to me in the fact that I think about my dad, who's not here to see this, and I can say thank you so much, old man, for all the lessons you gave me. But the other part about this in terms of the work is that in 2016, I was an organizer with the People's Lobby, and we joined a group of organizations to form the End Money Bond Coalition, and particularly for here, and I think for Champaign Bailout, the Illinois Network for Pretrial Justice. And because of this coalition, was really something special. Oftentimes when we think about criminal justice reform, it's sort of baked in this sort of stereotype of, these wild reformers who, aren't really clear about what's happening on the ground. But what actually it was hundreds of organizations across the state, in every corner of the state, ranging from survivors of domestic violence to people who are directly impacted in terms of pretrial incarceration. It was quoted as saying by the Illinois Coalition Against Domestic Violence that this was criminal justice reform that put survivor safety first. I think that's a rare achievement for what we did. So this is a judgment on a status quo that's not working. We're ending a system of cash bond that stands at the intersection of race, class, and gender. Cash bond says that if you are poor, then you get a lower tier of safety. If you're poor and black, you get an even lower tier of safety. And if you're poor, black, and a woman, you get an even lower tier of safety. The status quo is where someone like Kyle Rittenhouse, backed by his right-wing supporters, could bond out from jail and then go missing for a day. But a working-class black mom, like, say, Livette Mays, who's organized with the End Money Bond Coalition, struggles to get by and is stuck in jail, simply guilty of being poor. The status quo was rejected by coalitions and organizations. And because of this, we are moving towards real public safety and justice for all. And we will end wealth-based detention by 2023. This bill is a comprehensive improvement on the status quo overall. We've improved victim services and compensation, crime survivor trauma support services, use of force standards, moved away from guilt by association policies, as an example in Lake County, the Lake County 5, improved police accountability. Whether you live in Champaign or Vermilion County, Illinois, or Chicago, Illinois, real safety and justice for all means a good school in every neighborhood. It means a roof over our heads. It's our family and friends, especially on a birthday or a holiday. When people think about their safest moments, they close their eyes. They think about that one moment that makes them smile, that moment that brings tears of joy. Our task here in Illinois is to give these moments to people as much as possible. That is safety, that is justice, and that is dignity. That is the life we all deserve. Too often, our state is pitted against each other, Chicago versus everyone. I think we've all gotten used to the idea of Chicago versus everyone. I'm a proud Illinois resident who just so happens to live in Chicago, Illinois. This misses the fact that pain, violence, and struggle exists in every corner of Illinois. This misses the fact that no matter the zip code, we have people who just want to feel safe and haven't. We have police shootings all over the state. We have people turning toward addiction and theft due to poverty and stress all over the state. See, the status quo is failing central and southern Illinois. For 40 years, we have watched as manufacturing has moved out, along with relentless attacks on our labor unions. We have watched as big ag has eaten up family farms or saddled them with crushing debt. We have watched as our education system struggled through a painful budget impasse. And we have watched as a few benefited from tax breaks while the rest of us scraped by. While this has happened, too many leaders have turned towards incarceration and away from the difficult decisions of community investment. Safety and justice for all isn't locking up poor people, particularly poor people of color. No, safety and justice is looking at 40 years of failed policies and saying enough is enough. It is investing in our people, our communities, and building grassroots self-determined power. Whether it is Chicago or Springfield or anywhere in this state, we all deserve better. We deserve dignity and justice for all. So we're in the midst of 3 crises. I think we all know these crises: a public health crisis, an economic crisis, and a crisis with systemic racism, particularly in law enforcement. And these crises don't tell us anything new. What makes them so painful is that they highlight long-term failures. Frederick Douglass said, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will." He didn't just say this divorced from the world around him. It was a statement about the role of enslaved people in the emancipation of the Caribbean. He was saying that you must make bold demands, and you must be willing to struggle, and to struggle to win those demands will be a history-making act. Illinois' own Abraham Lincoln, I think we all know Abraham Lincoln in this state, I believe, said a house divided against itself cannot stand. That was not a statement about unity, but actually a very divisive statement, because Lincoln's next words were, "Our country will be either one that is slave or free." He was calling on us to make a choice as a people, that we can't avoid or ignore making that choice. We are in a similar period of time where we must make tough choices about who we are as a people. So we must make demands. We must make tough choices. These aren't my words, but the words of leaders before me. Lastly, let us talk about Dr. King. The Dr. King we know today isn't the Dr. King who lived. Dr. King in the 1960s, as he fought for justice, polled at 17%. I repeat that one more time, 17%. He was an extremely divisive figure who organized demands and called on us to make a choice about who we are as a people. Today, very smart people who think they know politics, who would tell me as a politician, maybe you should avoid Dr. King. He just doesn't poll well, is what they would say. But this isn't about polls, but what we as a people, as a state, need. It is about what is right. It's about history. It's about the world that we are building together. Safety and justice for all, no matter the zip code, is about making bold demands. making tough choices, and fighting for what is right. We have moved from Black Lives Matter yard signs to legislative action. And with the signing of HB 3653, the Safety Act, we have done that, and all of us should be proud. We have made history. We stand on the right side of that history. And this isn't the end of that history, but the beginning of the fight to make every community in Illinois whole. Thank you. Next up, James Corbin.
Senator Peters, thank you. Okay,
James, you might want to give, in case there are any cameras that want to turn your way, just give them one moment.
okay, we give it a moment.
I see.
Yep. I'm gonna move this up just a little. Okay. You ready? Okay, thank you, everyone. My name is James Corbin. I'm here to represent First Followers, a reentry group here local in Champaign County. And we serve individuals who are formerly incarcerated that are coming back home. And we like to call them returning citizens. We're gonna have to change our language on a lot of these formerly incarcerated because we want them to feel as if they are back into the community. So we don't want to use past terms. We want to change this to forward terms. So I would just like to say that, just a brief statement real quick. As far as First Followers, we have been involved in this type of mission since 2015. And we are committed to stay on this course. We are also, we're also grateful for the passage of House Bill 3653 and the work our local representative Carol Amos has done. Proud of her. She's a leader in our community. We all look up to Carol, all the Amons, Aaron and Carol, and their lovely daughter. So thank you again. Also, we are consistently dealing with this consequences of mass incarceration. So we understand the impact this has as far as long-term sentences, lack of pretrial services, absence of support for people released from IDOC, as well as access to resources, which is very critical. Access to opportunity are two different things. You gotta have access to the opportunity in order to make something happen. As far as that, we look forward to further collaboration with our state rep and individuals from around the state on presenting for even further changes in future system of mass incarceration. So I'd like to take the time to thank Governor Pritzker for signing this bill. This is monumental. Carol Amos for pushing it. And I also like to say the goal for pretrial services is basically to keep the returning individual. We want to keep them safe from harm, and that's done by three things: by one, collecting good data, reporting, and also making great recommendations and support for these individuals. And I would just say that First Followers is committed to doing these things, as well as bringing other help and working with other individuals to make this happen. And that's all I'm gonna say. For now, I'd like to bring up Miss Molly Runaway. I'm sorry if I messed it up, and to speak on the services, what she's offering, and the group, what they're doing here to end the bond. I think this is awesome work that they're doing in our area. So Molly, yes, please step up to the mic. Thank you.
Hello, I'm here as a member of the Champaign County Bailout Coalition. First, I would like to start with an analogy that I used in 2019 when I spoke at the Senate hearing in Springfield about the urgency to end cash bail. Like many others from communities like the one that I am from, I have lived the harsh realities of not only pretrial incarceration, but of mass incarceration as a whole. So now, everyone, please take a moment and envision yourself playing Texas Hold'em. You are up to the last hand and everything is on the line. The tension is rising and you are betting back and forth. Neither of you know if the other is bluffing and how far they are willing to go. As your heart starts to beat fast, your opponent raises you $10,000. Your hand isn't perfect. It's more like a straight, so it could go either way. You could really use the money, but you cannot afford to lose the money. Walking away at this point is not an option, so you have to make a bet and gamble on losing your savings or doubling it, or fold and lose everything. What do you do? Now, imagine you're not betting money. Instead, you're betting time. Time away from your kids, parents, friends. And instead of a casino, you're sitting in a jail cell and can only phone a friend if the friend can afford to talk to you. All of this is happening while your loved ones are on pins and needles. You can hear the despair in their voice as they tell you that everything is going to be okay. You are missing out on valuable time with your children. The other parent is having to make it work without you, and you can hear the stress and sleepless nights in their voice as they tell you everything is going to be okay. I can't imagine what taking part in this poker game must feel like, but I have been through this experience with those that I love, and it's hell. It is a nightmare. People might think that it's reasonable because people commit crimes. But let's not forget that this nightmare is before a person is ever convicted of a crime. In America, it is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but in reality, those with more means are able to buy better cards. The game is rigged, and this is an injustice. As someone who's been doing decarceral activism in Champaign County for the last 3 years and conducts research on the school-to-prison pipeline as a doctoral candidate across the street at this very university, I am thrilled to say that the rules to this game are changing. As we stand on the right side of history, Illinois is at the forefront. No longer will the cards be stacked against those from more humble means. We are finally moving towards a fair game and a society that is truly innocent until proven guilty. Release will no longer be based on whether or not somebody has release will no longer depend on people's financial means. And those that are accused will be viewed as holistic individuals rather than using risk assessments that are oppressive algorithms, but only work to perpetuate the state violence and structural racism that we are here today are working to dismantle. So today, I would like to thank Governor Pritzker for listening to evidence-based research, his constituents, and activists throughout the state and in this very county. I would also like to thank my fellow activists at the Champaign County Bailout Coalition, ACLU of Champaign County, Win Recovery, First Followers, the NAACP, and the Black Caucus. Lastly, I would like to thank all those that have the courage to radically reimagine public safety, not only in Illinois, but across the country. Now, I would like to bring up Senator Sims.
Molly, thank you for that introduction and for those great words. And thank you for all of the activists, because this is your moment. We thank our leader, Representative Carol Ammons, for the work that she has done in this moment. Certainly Senator Scott Bennett for his leadership in this moment and representing this community with distinction and honor. But for all of the activists, this is your moment. This is your moment because you have fought, you have lifted up your voices, you have challenged Springfield to be better. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Governor Pritzker, I have had the opportunity to know the governor now for several years very closely. And I'm always appreciative of the policies that you push and the ability to put the gubernatorial pen where your mouth is. Putting behind not just the statement, but the action, because that's what this is all about. We talked about, Madam President, you talked about the work that the NAACP has done. The NAACP produced a report several years ago that said born suspect. And it talked about the perspective that individuals who are black and brown and marginalized communities, and the perception that comes with how they are seen before they are ever talked to. You have experienced right now across this country. We continue to see individuals be ushered into the criminal justice system simply by walking and existing by being black. Just recently, there was a young man in Texas walking home in the cold without a coat, and he was arrested. Police officers encountered him. He said, "I'm okay. I don't need help." Now you will hear some say, well, he should have just stopped and talked to the police. He should have just given them the respect that they deserve. What about his respect? What about his humanity? And when you constantly feel the sting of injustice, it is difficult to explain that to someone who has never felt it. But that is what the Safety Act is all about. The Safety Act is all about creating safety in our communities, accountability for law enforcement, and fairness and equity in our criminal justice system. It is about moving us forward. This is not just a moment. This is a movement. This reform movement I've often said, this reform movement is not a destination. It's a journey. House Bill 3653 is a moment on that journey, but it's not the last stop. It is a place where we will continue to engage in these discussions, oftentimes very difficult discussions, but necessary discussions, because until all of us are free, none of us are free. That's why it's so important to have these discussions, to ignore the false narratives that this is somehow not reform, but somehow anti-police. When you reform the use of deadly force, that is somehow anti-police. When you reform the use of cash bail, that is somehow anti-police. That is not. It is neither. It is about creating equity and justice for those who so richly deserve it. You know, there is a saying from the great James Baldwin that not everything that can be faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Until we address the issues that hold us back from being not only the Illinois that we are, but the Illinois that we strive to be, we will not achieve the fairness and equity for us all. That's why the Safety Act is so important. Safety for all communities, accountability for law enforcement, and fairness and equity in our criminal justice system. Today, not in some future time, not at some future place. Today. You know, as I think about this moment, I think about where we were a century ago, and I think about this is Black History Month, and I am a proud student of history. I think about the first black member of the Illinois State Senate, Adalbert Roberts, who was the first black man to chair the Illinois Senate's Criminal Procedure Committee. I think about how he is looking down on us at this moment, about how he was at that time dealing with those three crises that we are still that Representative Peters talked about before: an economic crisis, a global pandemic, but the crisis of not just COVID-19, but the crisis of 1619. Well, that white lion, that boat, that ship that brought that scourge to the shores of this country, the white lion, plague that continues to plague this country. What I would say to opponents, and I would say to everyone who is listening to this, to listen to our speech, be able to distinguish and separate systemic racism from you being racist. We are not calling you racist by challenging systemic racism. They are two very different things. Acknowledge that systemic racism means that advantages have been built into systems that hold other people back and lift other people up. That is what we are challenging by challenging systemic racism. It does not mean you are racist. Please do not take that. The Safety Act calls for us to be better. It calls for us to reimagining public safety is not a slogan. It is a mindset. It calls for us to change our policies. It calls for us to change our actions. It calls for us to change the way that we address each other. Our criminal justice system has to be better. It will be better because all of us have started that journey here today. So, Governor, thank you for having the fortitude, the leadership to put Illinois at the forefront. I would say, Governor, you are going down in the pantheons of Illinois state history, and you will stand alongside Governor Louder as he created the Chicago Commission on Race, calling for a better, more perfect Illinois. And Governor, I appreciate you and thank you for your steadfast support, but I could not leave this podium without thanking the members of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus who had the courage to stand up, who had the courage to call for a better Illinois. Thank you for being the models of a better criminal justice system, but not just the criminal justice system, because the criminal justice system sits at the failure of failures in other areas. That's why you hear us talking about investments in the educational system, because if you don't adequately educate a child, they end up in the school to prison pipeline and they end up in the criminal justice system. If you don't adequately address mental health challenges, those individuals oftentimes end up in the criminal justice system. If you don't address individuals' economic insecurities, they will end up in the criminal justice system. So House Bill 3653 is part of a broader strategy. It is not a one size fits all, or is it one stop on the reform journey, but it is a journey. So thank you for having us, and thank you, Governor, for signing this monumental piece of legislation.
It is a hard act to follow, but happy to take any questions from members of the media. Well, let me be clear. There are aspects of this bill that are complex and that we need to work on all the way up to, for example, ending cash bail doesn't go into effect until January of 2023, because I think we all recognize that there's a discussion that needs to go on with prosecutors, with others, to make sure that this is done exactly in the way that will preserve the rights of the poor, and also make sure that we're keeping our streets safe and that we're doing the best we can to recognize the rights of everybody that's involved.
Officers often describe those split-second decisions when they're in pursuit of someone who may be armed.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't know. Where is that line, the rules of engagement? I understand this bill restrains and restricts in some cases the use of force.
Yep.
How does this contemplate that split-second decision?
Well, I'm going to make sure to bring an expert up on this. So both the chair, and also Representative Slaughter too.
He's still on fire.
Mark, page 285 of the bill says that it calls for an individual to look at the sanctity of human life and the exercise of understanding that the exercise of a force is an important thing, and they have to, and police officers have to recognize that. But also looking at the totality of the circumstances, and that's what I get back to, having an individual look at not just every person they encounter as a suspect, but going beyond that. And that's why the training is so critically important. The training aspect, you can't train away someone's racist heart. Can't train away implicit bias, but you can hold up a mirror to that. That's why the training that will allow someone to understand and challenge those internal decisions for themselves, those internal feelings for themselves, is so critically important. That's why we wanted to build in training protocols into the training protocols that officers go through, so they can address those things. They can address those biases right up front, so we can have a better professional policing.
Senator, while you're up there, you alluded to this in Peoria.
Yep.
But just for some local law enforcement agencies that are asking, what's in it for them if you speed up the process?
Absolutely. So right now, the body camera, and I haven't updated the numbers in the body camera grant fund, but last week there was $2,166,000 in the grant fund. The governor, in his proposal for fiscal year 2022, included $3.4 million for body-worn cameras for statewide implementation and deployment. We built into the new law an incentive for departments who want to deploy and invest in cameras, an incentive. So if a priority incentive for departments who want to do that. So if departments want to go after the grant programs now, they can do that. And as long as they apply for the grant program, they have priorities and priority funding for the monies that are available.
Governor, I gotta get to
Sure. Sorry.
what kind of a process do we have that allows a former legislator under FBI investigation to pick their successor and pressure that person to resign, walk home with full month paycheck. What kind of a system?
Well, let's be clear, the system of replacing a representative or a senator has been in place for some time. And I do think it's worthy of review. But what we're talking about is the choices often are between spending the money to have a special election for one particular position in which there's likely to be very low voter turnout. And so you could end up with, who knows, but certainly not the will of the people of the district in a special election like that, or a system where there's a selection process. Now, we could all argue about how that selection process should be run, and I've seen them run well, and I've seen them run not well. So I don't think we should be talking about the character of the people who are necessarily on that committee. I do think that making sure that we're picking good representatives and good senators, that is very important. So I think it's worthy of review by everybody that's standing here that's in the General Assembly to make sure that the choices are being made well.
That election process is part of the vetting process that was clearly missed here. What does Eddie Kadot's resignation say about former Speaker Madigan's judgment, and how much of the story do they need to come forward and tell us?
I don't know enough about the background of the reasoning behind why he was chosen and why he stepped down, so I really can't answer that question.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.